Hello there, Gamerinos and Gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and hey, a demo version for the upcoming Visions of Mana has just been released. It's just a very short experience, a small slice of the game where we only get to play through a small linear forest area, a large and open field where we get to roam around a bit, a small village, and one final scene with accompanying boss fight. It's also a pretty cheaply made demo. It's just a part arbitrarily picked out from some point in the game. You already have a party, it seems you already achieved part of your objectives, whatever they are. Characters reference things, but instead of creating intrigue, it's more so confusing. I don't know the words they're saying. I don't know why this or that might be important. Who even are those guys? Where are we? What happened before we arrived here? Maybe the demo could have had different dialogues or slightly altered cutscenes. Instead of talking about alms and the fall of this or that empire, the re-emergence of the lunar alm and all that stuff that just doesn't make a lot of sense without context, just have our heroes say, "Boy, are we glad that we have all those amazing powers of the elements. Now let's head to the harbor town and grab a ship to find even more heroes like ourselves." When we enter the Fellow Step, one of the characters we barely got to know begins to reminisce about his past, and shortly afterwards a man from his past appears, talks to you for just a moment, reminisces himself, and finally gives you your transportation method. That was the purpose of this guy. For the purpose of this demo, all the backstory stuff could have been skipped. We don't know those guys. It has zero impact on anything. Just skip over all the reminiscing, let the party just address the stranger, tell him they are heroes on a quest for the mana tree, and receive the transportation because of that. Or maybe just pick a better part for the demo. The Trials of Mana demo gave us the chance to play each character's origin as well as the first chapter of the main story. That way there was no confusion about the story. We still got to experience all the core mechanics and we saw a number of different environments. Maybe this isn't possible with this game story, but then the demo could have just skipped to selected parts of the story. Well, anyways, during the demo you can play around with, I guess, most of the core mechanics and can even test out different builds and loadouts. We start out in a snowy forest that isn't worth much talking about. It's for all intents and purposes a long winding hallway with a few hidden goodies here and there, and it introduces small puzzle mechanics. And calling them puzzles is already praising them too much. It's more like there are roadblocks here and there along the way that are similar to Zelda or Metroid, and you need certain abilities to overcome them. And these abilities are context sensitive and are granted to you by the somewhat well-known sprites from the Mana series. So here you need to use Luna's power to affect time, to slow down the ice flows and make your way across the river. You don't have to think too much about it. If there are little glowy things floating around, just press the corresponding button and you do the thing. The challenge, if you want to call it that, more so comes down to you remembering where each of those interactions are and come back once you've collected the correct sprite. After the forest, we arrive at Fellow Step, a large free-roaming area with little in terms of inspired map design. And this sadly holds true for all the areas within the demo. So I hope that this isn't indicative of the whole game's quality. But yeah, this field area is rather large and filled with lots of treasure chests, special combat encounters against buffed up enemies, a few simple side quests and of course some really neat looking landmarks. Traversing this area is a bit mindless, you mostly can ignore the level geometry. There are some cliffs you can't just jump up or down, but mostly you can just run or jump and dash wherever you want, and it seems to be only there for the scenic view. But that one at least really does hit the mark. My guess is that these areas will pop up in every region and connect all the villages and dungeons and just set the tone for that part of the story. The village, as a stark contrast to the field before, is a complicated and intricate map, using winding and crossing paths to connect areas on different elevations, cleverly hiding goodies and collectibles. But even here there's something missing. All of the buildings are inaccessible. Yeah, we all make fun of the weird notion that the hero just waltzes into everyone's home and plunders their pantry and steals their savings.
It's a cabinet, it opens in the front.
But it's just such an ingrained part of RPGs that it feels really off to not have it here. Yeah, there's no actual need to enter any of the houses, but to me it makes the world feel smaller that way. It's really just personal preference, and to be completely honest, the game and its pacing might even benefit from it, since most of the time, less important house interiors in JRPGs all look the same and don't really offer anything to the player, gameplay or story-wise, and at most reward you with a common consumable. But I still miss them if they aren't there anymore. I'm weird that way. As for the meat of the game, the combat, it's alright. It's similar to the combat system in the Trials of Mana remake, but there are quite a few differences. On that note, I have to give it to the developers that they didn't just completely reuse Trials of Mana's engine and mechanics and slapped a new story over it. The Trials of Mana remake itself was a huge accomplishment, recreating and modernizing this 2D top-down game from the 90s in an incredible way. Adding just the right amount of complexity, so the devs would have been excused for just reusing this base to tell another story, but instead they changed things up a bit. Exploration is a bit more varied, as I've explained earlier, but also the combat functions differently to the previous game. Enemies still inhabit the game world, and approaching them places a temporary arena down around you. You can still flee from battle by approaching the edge of the arena, and you still have standard attacks with their small combo chains, special attacks, dodges, jumps, and with that, jump attacks. But your regular attacks don't have as much variety anymore. Well, that's not completely true, but to explain I need to talk about this game's class system. So instead of giving every character their unique fighting style with different combos, they gave every party member a bunch of different fighting styles connected to the sprites you have collected that themselves offer less variety. So the styles themselves are really simple, but in exchange there's a lot of them and you can swap around and experiment until you find the right combination for any situation and of course the most fun for your personal playstyle. That said, through the leveling system you are able to unlock both passive and active abilities for each style, so over time the fighting will get a bit more complex. On the other hand, in Trials of Mana you learned stronger finishing blows for each class and had to tactically choose which one to use, and each character built up their finishing gauge separately from one another. In this game, the finisher gauge is a shared resource, and once it's fully charged, you can fire off one finishing blow with any of your party members, and that one is determined by their fighting style, so no further decision making involved. I won't say it's worse than in the previous game, but I kinda prefer Trials of Mana's approach. But still, the combat accomplishes what it sets out to do, and there's a lot of spells you get to learn, and with that enemies' resistances and behaviors you need to account for to keep you on your toes. And the different character designs from all the different fighting styles and the different attack animations and timings offer enough variety to keep the battles from getting stale. At least I hope it stays that way throughout the whole game. One thing I noticed was that enemy special attacks or spells now charge a lot faster than in Trials of Mana, so it's quite a bit harder to avoid them, which I think is a good change. I guess charging times and enemy aggressiveness, which is an actual thing in this game, are way better methods of increasing the difficulty in a JRPG than just raising the damage and health numbers. I don't want to wail for half an hour on a level 1 enemy that can kill me in a few hits. Instead, let it attack more relentlessly, so that I have to actually play better and not just more defensive. The music so far has been okay. It's not bad, I actually enjoyed it while playing, but it just isn't as catchy or memorable as the one in previous games. It just tinkles away in the background, and that's not what Seiken Densetsu is known for. The graphics are really nice, environments have this pleasant look, full of details, and it's just so distinctively Secret of Mana. Not saying there's an overarching art style throughout all the games. Quite the opposite is the case, in fact. Well, except for the character designs. Those ones are striking and something of an showpiece for the series. That and the dancing merchants, of course. Always great to see them coming back. But there's just something about the Mana series' art style, with the warm colors, the pleasant environments, and the unorthodox color palette in many instances. Like the blue trees in this one. It's a joy to look at and makes the mindless traversal more enjoyable. The frame rate though is not always up to snuff. This here is the PS5 version and I guess it's representative to all the versions. I don't think there'll be a more stable version, at least not unmodded around the release date. And there's a lot of really noticeable frame or animation stuttering going on. It's not game breaking or anything, but I feel a game like this has no excuse to have stutters during cutscenes or even during exploration, since there's really not that much going on in any area. What I've seen from the story so far has me a bit disappointed. It's a lot of this contemporary anime style, and hey, the older games also were full of, at the time, contemporary anime tropes and stuff, but anime at the time were also better, so it wasn't a problem back then. I'm still planning on making a video on that topic to explain it a bit better. But what I mean in the context of this game is the over-reliance of goofiness in many scenes, even if the story tries to insist that something serious is happening, or weird relationship drama or implied romances between characters with the romantic maturity of a toddler. Modern JRPGs seem to be less capable of balancing comedy and tragedy than their predecessors from the 90s. Or look at this. One of my party members is accused of theft, so I now have to search the town for the missing item. But why should my team even consider this? I don't have any reason to humor that guy. Who knows, maybe he lost his stuff outside of town, so I'm not even sure I could prove my friend's innocence. The game tries to explain this in a moment of rather stilted exposition, as this guy is supposed to be an important government official. Well, then why is he here in this small fishing village, I don't know how many miles away from any larger city, with only 2 guards that don't look particularly capable? And if he is that powerful and influential that I can't disobey him, then why can one of my friends just steal his sword in the next scene and humiliate him without repercussions? If he is such a key figure at the king's court who is rumored to be trying to become the next king, why does he throw a tantrum in town? Why does he come off as a joke in every scene he's in? Why are people comfortable in laughing at him? Yeah, I'm not too fond of that stuff. The broader story, from what I've gathered, seems rather similar to Final Fantasy X. To keep the world in balance and prevent calamity, a group of chosen people, connected to the spirits it seems, have to journey to the mana tree and sacrifice their souls, or something. But this wasn't always the case, as we know from the other games, and there might be a way to keep the world from being destroyed without the journey. Maybe there's even a kind of conspiracy going on. And I am sure that the main hero, whose job for now is to be a bodyguard for the sacrifices, turns out to be this story's chosen hero and wielder of the mana sword. Not the most original setup, but still a good reason to travel to each spirit's region and collect another party member. And I mean, that's all I need from a mana game. So all in all, a very promising demo. Not because of the demo itself, but because of the game. And the game itself releases at the end of August, so in a few weeks. And I'm really looking forward to playing it, even with my mixed feelings. Because, all in all, it felt really solid. The one boss fight was really fun. The class system promises tons of customization, and I'm sure later dungeons will be more complex and villages and towns as well will have a bit more to them. If you want to check it out for yourselves, well, what are you waiting for? Just download the damn thing. Or maybe you've already seen enough and have already decided to get the game. Or maybe not. No matter what you do, have an incredible day. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.